Welcome all. So today we will be discussing about couple and relationship counseling. So what are the learning objectives of today's session? So we'll be understanding when and when not to provide couple counseling, understanding the process of couple and relationship counseling, to learn about safeguarding children from violence in the family. So let's understand what is couple counseling. So couple counseling is provided to people who are in relationship, either married or unmarried. It's also known as marital counseling if the couple is married. So couple counseling is effective to any couple regardless of the age, gender, religion, or marital status. So what are some of the goals of couple counseling? One is to improve the relationship of the couple, to improve the communication patterns between the couple. A couple can have any kind of communication patterns which are unhealthy. So to provide a healthier inputs on healthier ways of communication patterns, to enhance problem solving, usually to look at like how they solve problems which can have positive or negative impact on their relationship, and to encourage effective conflict resolution. So for whom do we provide couple counseling? Couple counseling can be provided to wide range of populations. It can be provided to couple who are in any form of romantic relationship. It can be provided to any two individuals who share a romantic bond and identify themselves as couple, irrespective of age, gender, and marital status. It can be provided to couples who are unmarried, who are married, who live together, who are in any kind of casual relationship, and even elderly couples. LGBTQI couples is another group of people who would benefit from couple counseling. LGBTQI refers to section of people whose sexual orientation is different. It stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, and intersex couple. Even these people can be benefited from couple counseling. So why couple counseling is required? It is mainly to improve relationship among the couple by better conflict resolution, to identify the patterns they follow in communication, the methods they resolve the conflicts, and the solve problems. These patterns can be discussed with the therapist, and if the patterns are maladaptive, it can be shifted to much healthier and mature patterns through which the quality of the relationship increases. If the couple have decided beforehand about the separation, even the couple counseling can help in it can help in supporting for a safe separation if needed. And even the post separation conditions can be discussed in the couple counseling with the help of the therapist. If the couple has decided about separation, they can discuss about handling finances later and about childcare. So when do we start couple counseling? Couple counseling may not be done at all situations. So there are certain indicators when we start couple counseling. So the first important thing is safety of the woman and her child. So you have to double check and doubly ensure that safety is of the utmost importance. So ensure safety before you start couple counseling. And only if the woman has consented for a joint session, once you discuss the process in detail. By chance, if the woman doesn't consent, then you may not be able to proceed with the couple counseling. So why this is important? What happens in the couple counseling when you start couple counseling? There will be various issues which you will be discussing, which might trigger violence, maybe during the session and even after the session. So women might not have a place to go after the session. So it's very important to discuss about the safety of the women and also about the consent before every session. So let's have a look at other factors when you start couple counseling. When there is situational violence, that is when the violence is situational or contextual. So there are two kinds of violence which we usually discuss. One is the situational violence, and other is the violence due to patriarchal beliefs. So situational violence is provoked by a situation when the emotions get out of control and escalates. That is one of the indicator for couple counseling. So I'll be discussing about the patriarchal beliefs little later. So where you might not be able to provide couple counseling, and both the couple, the husband and the wife, should be able to articulate commitment to improve relationship. It's just not one person. Both should articulate about the commitment. The couple can adhere to a contract of no further abuse. Here, the contract can be verbal or written, which conveys the message that there will be not be any further violence from both the couple under any circumstances. But we have to keep in mind that the contract does not have any legal value, but a discussion can be facilitated with the couple that if the contract is violated, what should be the response from the partner and how to ensure safety. So let's have look at the situations when we will not be able to provide couple counseling. So if the issues are rooted in patriarchal beliefs, that is where the men, where the family believes that men hold the control of the family. There is extreme male dominance. There is male centeredness, and the entire authority is given to the male. And where there is also use of power control wheel. This power control wheel is basically where they use certain tactics to gain and to maintain that power and control over a woman. So some of the tactics used are it can be economic abuse, there can be coercions, threats, intimidation, emotional abuse, there can be isolation, there can be blaming, and in sometimes they use children even to kind of threaten when there is ongoing violence, and they maintain that power and control. If the woman is fearful of her partner, you don't proceed with couple counseling. If the woman is not comfortable with a joint session and does not give consent before the session starts, you will again not proceed with couple counseling. Again, if both the partners are not agreeing for a joint session, you will not proceed with couple counseling. When there is ongoing severe violence, it's advised not to proceed with couple counseling. And when the woman or her partner lacks the capacity to give the consent, like example in case of acute psychotic illness or dementia, where the capacity to listen, understand, reflect, and comprehend is compromised, couple counseling should be avoided. And if the woman has decided to end the relationship, again, you will not proceed with couple counseling. And when the risk of aggression is high, as we discussed earlier, when you start discussing about certain issues in the couple counseling, there can be increase in the violence that during the session or even after the session. So if the risk is getting high, again, you will not proceed with couple counseling. Again, if the partner has personality disorders, for example, if the partner is having personality disorders like antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, paranoid personality disorder, again, you'll not proceed with couple counseling. So let's briefly understand what are these personality disorder. So antisocial personality disorder, where the person is extremely manipulative, he's exploiting and violating all the rules and the laws. There is extreme lack of concern. There is lack of empathy for anything. And though he commits any kind of mistake, he doesn't have any remorse. So narcissistic personality is where the individual has a high belief about oneself. There is an inflated sense of their own importance. Again, there is lack of empathy, and there is excessive admiration about oneself. Paranoid personality is where a person is constantly doubting about another person, holds continuous grudges about another person. There is extreme distrust about another person. So, for example, there can be the husband can be very suspicious about the wife, that she is unfaithful, For example, he might be following her, he might be continuously checking her phone. So these are the certain traits in paranoid personality where couple counseling becomes extremely difficult. So in such cases, when you come across that a partner is suffering, as the husband is suffering from these personality disorders, it's better to evaluate and refer to a mental health professional, and if required, individual therapy can be started. When you come across situation where the when the partner is suffering from substance use disorder, like severe alcohol use disorder, where the substance use is one of the contributing factor for the violence. Under the influence of substance, there is extreme disinhibition and the violence increases. And in such cases, it's better to avoid couple counseling. So in such cases, we can evaluate that person, refer for treatment, and once the situation is better about the substance use, then probably we can think of couple counseling. So let's have a look at the types of violence between the couple. There can be physical violence, where the partner physically inflicts pain uh, to the partner, like example, slapping, hitting, kicking, beating. Emotional violence, where there is behavior like insulting, belittling, constant humiliation, intimidation, threats of harm, threats of threats of taking away the children. Sexual violence, where the partner is forced for sexual intercourse and other forms of sexual coercion. Controlling behavior includes isolating a person from family and friends, monitoring their movements, and restricting access to financial resources, employment, education, or even medical care. Let's understand what are coercive behaviors. So there will be where a partner uses some forceful means, like example, monitoring her activities, again, making threats. Let's see what are the factors leading to male to female violence in a relationship. As we discussed, there can be suspiciousness about the partner, thinking that the partner is unfaithful. There can be mental health issues of the perpetrator, which can be contributing for the violence. There can be substance use, example, alcohol or any other substance, which can contribute to the violence. There can be personality disorders, as we discussed. In certain situations, the perpetrator can be exposed to violence from childhood itself. There can be strong patriarchal beliefs, which can contribute to the violence, where there is extreme male dominance in the family and which is accepted in that family. There can be dowry related issues, perceiving violence as a masculine behavior. So next, we'll see what to do in couple counseling. As we were discussing, it's very important to take consent before every session. Again, to check for any kind of violence, if it is kind of aggravated before any session. And we have to explain to the couple that the primary goal of therapy is ending violence among the couple. And it's very important to check for specific risk factors for the violence, which can help in the process of couple counseling, where we can work on these risk factors and discuss about the negative consequences of the violence. In detail, discussion has to be held with the couple to understand what are all the negative consequences that has occurred as a result of violence in the relationship. These can be discussed focusing on social, economic, individual, and family aspects. It's also important to discuss that there is always a risk of injury, even if less violence is present. So we have to also focus on the anger management techniques and afterwards on problem solving skills. If you come across if the partner is suffering from extreme anger issues, also it's good to discuss that to make them understand that violence is a learned behavior and a choice. So in couple counseling, both spouses must take responsibility for stopping violence among them. As we discussed earlier, it's very important to have a no violence contract, either written or verbal, with the therapist. And again, it's very important to regularly check for escalation of violence among the couple. So partner can get aggressive during or after the session, because there will be a lot of sensitive issues discussed during the session. Ask both the partners to think about steps to prevent further violence. And it's for the counselor, it's good to have that that the counselor discusses the couple sessions with the peers or the supervisors while maintaining the confidentiality. Again, during the when you see the couple for the first session, it's very important to share important information and list of referral services. In certain instances, the couple might not come back due to various reasons, so it's important to share as much as information is required and possible from your side. And appointment for the further session, consider the convenience of both the partners to discuss the time, the duration of the sessions, and their availability while you're scheduling the next session. Establish and strengthen a support system. Again, as we are discussing, it's very important to keep on discussing, keep on emphasizing about the safety planning. Uh, Safety planning in the form where women can how women can seek help if the violence increases in the family, to whom she can reach, various helpline numbers, emergency bag, etc. So as we were discussing about these anger management uh, techniques, so let's have a look at that. So if you come across, if one of the partner is suffering from anger management issues, so these are the basic skills which you can discuss in your sessions. So one of the technique is stop skill, where S stands that stop for that moment, do not react. T is take a step back from the situation. O is observe your body and thoughts. P is proceed carefully. So basically, when the partner identifies that he or she is suffering from anger issues, so the best is not to react at that situation. Pause for a second, pause for a few minutes. Probably it's better to leave that situation. And when they are in a better state of mind, when they are calm, again to come inside, come inside the house, or come inside. I mean, come into that place where they are able to discuss about the situation. So it's good to write about anger. So what we tell it as anger management diary, where you have a diary where you uh, write, mention the date, time, and we call it as a ABC analysis, where A stands for antecedent, that is situation that caused anger. B is for behavior. So what did you do when you got angry? C is for consequences. So after once you got angry, what were the consequences after that? What were the negative consequences after that? So analyzing this ABC, that is antecedent, behavior, and consequences, we will have a better understanding about their issues, where we can kind of work on the unhealthy thinking pattern. For example, here a antecedent. So what happens when husband enters the house? He's extremely tired. He's probably under a lot of stress in his job. So wife keeps waiting for him, and he enters the house, and wife is expecting a hug from him, but which doesn't happen. So that is the antecedent. So behavior, he just throws his bag. The husband comes from the office and throws his bag, and he just goes into the room and lies down. So during this situation, the wife gets extremely angry and she feels extremely hurt, that she starts thinking that this person was all fine and he's not liking me anymore. He's not himself. So these are the thinking pattern which the in which the wife starts thinking. The consequences, again, as I told, the wife is extremely hurt, the extremely afraid, hurt, sad. So where she experiences that her chest is becoming tight, she's having sweating. So when you have detailed analysis about this situation, so probably you can work on the unhealthy thinking patterns. And during that, like what was the behavior, how the person can change during the situation, and what are the negative consequences. So next we'll have a look at problem solving. What are the steps to solve a problem? The first important thing is identify what the problem actually is. Brainstorm all available solutions for the problem. Select the best solution for assessing pros and cons of the situation. pros and cons of the solutions. Implement the selected solution. Check if the picked solution is working out in resolving the problem. If it is not working or not giving the desired results, pick another solution from what has been brainstormed, implemented. Check for the result. This process can be continued until the problem is solved completely. So next, let's understand about conflict resolution. So there are certain healthy methods how you resolve the conflict. So conflict is basically the differences among the couple. So let's have a look at the healthy method. One is reasoning, where you use rational arguments, where there might be differences among the couple. So you'll be basically checking what are the alternatives to resolve that conflict, to resolve the differences, where you will sit as a therapist and you will kind of ask the couple like how they can find solutions to solve that problem, to resolve the conflict. Next one is assertion. Assertion is basically the how you express, you assert yourself, like what are your thoughts, what are your emotions, you want to express it directly and in a very respectful way. A partner support, that is acknowledging partner's views, where you use techniques like active listening or questioning, expressing clear agreement with the partner, making compromises or concessions where you come to a middle ground. For example, when a partner is angry, uh, or he's like he or she is behaving in a different way, so the other partner kind of acknowledges that partner's view, or kind of understands that partner, and they come to a middle ground. So now we discussed about healthy methods. Now we will see what are the negative methods in conflict resolution. One is coercion. That is where you kind of use forceful means to take something, like you're blaming that person, you're threatening that person to take something, like in a couple relationship what happens is like you threaten and take that power, where you use sarcasm or physical or verbal aggression. Another negative method of conflict resolution is manipulation, that is attempting to gain compliance by false means, where you provide misleading information, you manipulate a lot of things. Another one is avoidance, where you physically and emotionally withdraw from the situation. So you don't, so you like you just change the topic, you avoid speaking about the topic, you avoid any kind of eye contact, or you just minimize the situation by joking, which is again a very negative method of conflict resolution, which will not help in any way. So we are coming to the last part of the presentation, that is safeguarding children. Children from violent households are at the risk of developing mental health problems. They are likely to adapt to negative coping to solve their problems also. They can be perpetrators in the future as they have learned violence as a method of problem solving. So you will be discussing about the safety planning of children with the mother and the child. So the child to be taught about the safety behaviors, this about the safety places where they can go when there is increased violence in the family, like where they can go to a safe place in the house if they are not able to move out. For example, where if they can go into a room which is safe in the house, or if they can seek help from the neighbor, or if they can seek help from relatives in and around. And it's very important to identify a safe adult where they can immediately seek help when the violence increases. And also it's important to, as a part of safety planning, it's important to give certain helpline numbers to the child, and where they can seek help, where they can immediately call police or the helpline numbers. Separation of child or children from the violent environment to be considered when all other means of safety have been considered and offered. So separation of the child from the parents is the last resort. Institutionalizing the child because of the violent environment at home should be considered only after trying other options. The options can be shifting the child to other family members' houses or other, depending on the available resources of the family. If the child is at imminent risk, you consider separation. When the victim is unable to protect the child, you consider separation of the child. If you're concerned about the child's safety, you contact the Childline Child Welfare Committee. Teach the child about what to do during the crisis, as we discussed. where they can seek help from the helpline numbers or the police, or identifying safe places in the house or outside the house. Help the child identify his or her safe places. Thank you.